time. Welcome everyone to this meeting of virtual professional speakers Toastmasters. I'm Linda, I'm the Sergeant at Arms, and I will also be the Toastmaster, but for right now, I'd like to hand it over to our club president, Stan Piskorski. Stan?
Thank you, Madam Sergeant at Arms. Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see everyone here, and seeing that we're going to have a few more people coming in. I expect that there will be some interruptions along the way as we get rolling. But one of the things that this club is really becoming very well known for is the fact that we give really, really good feedback. And we've got some reasons for that, and you're going to hear some of those reasons this evening. So I'm excited that we have so many people who are guests, and I hope that you'll get a lot out of it. One thing I would like to do at the very, very beginning is ask you all in the chat to type to everyone, if you're not a member of this club, how did you hear about us and which club are you with? And give us not only the club name, but what city and state or location in the world you're at. So we get sort of an idea of where our audience is. So please put that in the chat for everyone so that we can all see each other. It's our way of getting to know you just a little bit better. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to our Toastmaster. Linda, is there anything else you need from me?
No, I think we're all set. Thank you. Now, just a moment ago, I put the agenda for the evening into the chat, so that can help you have an idea of what's going on. This is not our usual program. Because of the panel discussion, which is going to take a lot of time, we streamlined some of the other elements, but we did want to keep the things that make our club special, that are not necessarily typical of other Toastmasters clubs. And so with that, the first thing on our agenda will be what's called the tech moment, which gives one of our members an opportunity to talk about some aspect of technology that they have found helpful in their life or in a Toastmasters meeting. And for that, we will be hearing from one of our newer members, Masayo. Masayo?
Hello, everybody. Good evening or good morning. Can I share my screen if possible? I'd like to show my screen. I'm not sure if I can do that. Let me try. Oh, I'm not. No.
Yes,
So,
you can now.
Okay. This is Masayo. I joined this club last month, and today I would like to introduce one of my favorite Toastmasters International database viewer tool called TM Tools. So TM Tools, it looks like this, right? So let me share the link in the chat box later. And Toastmasters International has a huge database of members, clubs, and districts. And this is prepared by one of the Toastmasters named George Marshall, one of my friends. And this one is very convenient to check the members' information. For example, for the education awards by member, you can put someone's name, the past and the current member's name, the family name first, like me, my name is like here, and this one is my first name, or part of it is okay, and click the member awards. And this will show instantly all the education awards. And the club number, club education menu shows, well, if you know the exact club number, and you can see this is a virtual professional speakers number, and you can see this. And this, I use this club, this statistics comparisons menu for the purpose, not for this viewer. I use this for check out where all each districts locates. like number one is in the Western Los Angeles County or something like that. From all district number 1 to F and U, you can check the statistics of the district. One more thing, okay, I don't have much time, so let me show the Get the Club menu. So this is similar to, okay, for example, district number 1, find a club spreadsheet. So all clubs in district number 1, the division area, club number, club name, and when chartered and active or inactive, on the Zoom, on the club addresses and club contact, and the club meeting information like the week of the day and time, and the contact and website. So I would like, I hope that this will fill out your curiosity about Toastmasters a lot. Back to you, Linda.
Okay. Thank you so much, Messiah. Next, I'd like to ask our watcher, Albert, to explain his role. A watcher is not a role that we have in a regular in-person Toastmasters meeting, although sometimes having seen it in this club, I think maybe we should. So Albert, can you please just fill us in on what the watcher is going to do?
I thank you, Madam Toastmaster. And as the watcher in the US here, there is something that we call Big Brother watching you, but I am not that. It's not Big Brother. It's actually just the fact that we are virtual and we want to improve, or at least be sure that we have a very professional virtual presence. So I'll be looking to see if there are any things in terms of your video or your audio that might get in the way of having an effective presence. So at the end, I'm going to just highlight any small things that I see. But for now, it seems like most people are actually very well set up. I'll talk to you at the end. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Albert. All right, so at this point, we're going to get started with, I suppose we could call it the main attraction of the evening, and that is the panel discussion about evaluation, evaluate like a winner. And here's how this came about. I joined this club about a year ago because I was really impressed with the feedback, as Stan mentioned earlier. And I heard after a while that there were a couple of club members here that have actually won multiple evaluation contests in their home districts. And I thought of all the questions I would love to ask them. And then I thought about how other people might like to hear the answers to those questions too. Then I also knew another evaluation contest district level winner, and that's Tina Renee D'Souza. So I put the three of them together and invited them to participate in this panel discussion. That's what we're going to be doing this evening. Now, the way that this is going to work is that we're going to start off with each of them having a 4 to 6 minute segment where they can talk about their approach to evaluation. And then we'll have a question and answer session. Now, I've come up with a number of questions for them on my own, but if you have questions for them, please go ahead and put them into the chat. And if you have a specific person you would like those questions directed to, include that as well. So with that, I'm going to start off by introducing our first of the three panelists that will be speaking to you. Tina Renee D'Souza has been a Toastmaster for 9 years. She earned her Distinguished Toastmaster Evaluation or Award in 2019 and won District 55's evaluation contest in 2021. She is a member of 2 regular clubs and 1 advanced club in District 55 here in Texas. She is a retired software engineer and spends her days playing the flute, tending her garden, and reading. Tina?
Thank you, Linda, our Madam Moderator and Madam Toastmaster. When we were planning for this event, Linda asked the question, how do you approach evaluations? And that's the question that I took to start this discussion today. And the first thing that I want to start with a disclaimer of sorts is that I'm going to talk about in this little bit non-contest evaluations. Because one of the questions that we discussed is there a difference between contest and non-contest evaluations? Spoiler alert, I think there's a huge difference, which is why I'm going to talk about the evaluations that you will see in your club, or hopefully you'll see in your club. The way that I personally approach evaluations has changed over the years. Some of you already know that when I started with Toastmasters, I was terrified. And one of the things I didn't want to do was give a speech evaluation. I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And the only thing that kind of forced me in a way to do it was, some of you remember the old CL manuals, and you had to do a speech evaluation to tick off a box. That's why I did my first evaluation, because I had a box to tick off. That tells you a little bit about me, something about me. I am driven by ticking off boxes. So I was very afraid, and I continued to be very afraid for many years, in fact. The way I had to approach evaluations when I first started was just say something, say anything. I was so overwhelmed with the enormity of the task that I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to write down. So I literally just wrote down anything I could figure out to say and hope that there was something that I said that would help the speaker. I think that's where a lot of people start. And I don't think there's anything wrong with starting there. Everybody has to start somewhere, right? And certainly it worked for me, because that's where I began my evaluation journey. Over the course of evaluating a lot, and that's how I got much better, was just practice, practice, practice with evaluations. I discovered something that I now tell beginning Toastmasters, and it's something that I go back to if I'm feeling stressed. I always tell beginning Toastmasters, just tell the speaker what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt. Because evaluations are really just about our opinions anyway. And it doesn't matter who the speaker is, you can tell them what you saw, what you felt, and or what you heard. It doesn't matter, any of those three things. So that's what I tell speakers now, if you're nervous. But my style has, I will call it, matured over the years. And I've discovered that I do things a lot different now than I used to, or what I would advise someone who's a little nervous to do. Because I've done so many evaluations, I estimate that I've done hundreds of evaluations over the years. My style is much more free, call it loosey-goosey. What do I feel like doing today? Pretty much rules the way I do evaluations. But as I was thinking about what's important to me when I do an evaluation, I realized there are 4 things that are really important to me now that I didn't have the skill to worry about 8, 10 years ago, however long it was when I started this journey. And the first one, a lot of us are well versed in. It's knowing the level of your speaker, knowing the goals of your speaker. And sometimes those are project goals and they're very specific, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes there are things that the speaker needs from you that has nothing to do with the Toastmaster goals. So that's the first step. But the second thing that I figured out that I do that is important is that I have to take a broad enough view of the speech to be able to step back and see what's the most important things I could say to this speaker to really give them the biggest bang for their buck the next time they do this speech or a speech like it. So it's that broad view, and I'm good at that because I'm a high-level thinker. But then I realized the next thing I need to do is take a very detailed view of the speech, because it's not enough to say your gestures need work. I need to be able to specifically say, when you did this, I didn't know what that was. I realized that's a 3, but maybe you should have done this, or whatever. I have to be detailed enough to be able to tell them what didn't work for me so that I can tell them what might work. And then the last thing that I realized that I'm always working on now is assessing whether the particular speaker that I'm listening to has the ability to receive the feedback. And for some people, that might be a little strange. That's kind of not my problem, right? That's their problem. No, it is my problem, because if I'm giving feedback that's too challenging, that's too in their face, that's too whatever, it's not going to land properly. And it's not just about whether they're a new speaker or not, by the way. It's about whether, as a human being, their personality is such that they're ready to receive this feedback. And I never was at the beginning of my Toastmasters journey. So there's nothing wrong with not being able to take in the feedback. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that I learned how to take in feedback. But I realized that that is a huge part of what makes an evaluation successful. And that's what I'm working on now. For me, ironically, one of the aspects of evaluations that was so scary in the beginning is one of the things that makes it interesting to me. In the beginning, I couldn't juggle all the things that were happening. There's no way I was going to think about, can the speaker receive this feedback? But at this point, it is the fact that it's so challenging, that there are so many moving parts, that makes it interesting to me. And that's why I'm constantly interested in giving evaluations, because it is a constant challenge. Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Tina. So next up, we have the second of our panelists, and that will be Kevin DeRosier. Kevin has been a Toastmaster for 21 years. He has won his district evaluation contest 3 times and the district table topics contest twice. He is a 2-time distinguished Toastmaster and the past District 8 Toastmaster of the Year and Division Governor of the Year. Kevin is also an award-winning author, a public speaking coach, and an avid nature photographer. Kevin?
Moderator, thank you so much. Welcome all of our guests. I'm going to talk a little bit about my method for evaluating, and I'll focus more on the contest portion of that than on the general, because you can apply contests to a club evaluation as well. And I will give you 7 points that I think will drive home what I'm trying to say. The first is, it is about the speaker, not you. How many times have you seen somebody get up there and say, yeah, when you went on this trip, I had a trip to Maine just like that, and I did this, this, and this. They're talking about themselves. No, it's about the person that gave the speech. Don't waste that precious time talking about yourself. We don't care about you, nothing personal. Anybody that knows me knows I say it like I hear it or see it. Know the contest judge's guide backwards and forwards. Before every contest, before every evaluation, I look at this, and I look at the front and the back, and that's on the Toastmasters website. In 2008, when I won my first evaluation contest, I was going against the reigning champion who'd won twice before. And I was first to give my evaluation, so I saw his, and I thought it was neck and neck, but I knew I won. Why did I know that? Because he did not summarize, and that is 15 points on the judge's ballot. So he came up to me afterwards and says, Kevin, you saw both evaluations. What did you do that I didn't? And I said, Bob, you left 15 points on the table by not summarizing. And that's important, because when you give a speech, you want to wrap it up at the end and bring things back together and remind people of what you said. Now, there are 3 methods, and I use a method that a lot of people don't. I use the sandwich method, but there's the as I saw it, as I heard, as I feel. And that is a method that Tina talked about a little bit. There's a Toastmasters evaluation sheet, what you did well, what you can improve on, and how you can stretch yourself. And then there's a sandwich method. I always like to end on a positive, so I use the sandwich method. I start just a general statement or 2, then I give 2 things I did well, 2 opportunities. I call them opportunities. I don't call them ways you can improve or things you could do better. It's opportunities. And then I give what they did best, go into my summary, and end the evaluation. I generally go about 3 minutes, 10 seconds, and you want to give a lot of time for an evaluation so you can get as much information to the person speaking as possible. But we all get those milquetoast evaluations, and I can't stand it. Somebody gets up and says, Kevin, you did a great job. You did this well, that well. I can't think of anything you can improve on. When I sat down, I knew 3 or 4 things I wished I'd done better. So here are 12 things that I'm always looking for. First is vocal variety, and you'll see this in an old Competent Communicator manual. Eye contact, gestures, movement, opening and closing. Is it a strong opening? Does it grab your attention? Is it a strong closing? Does it wrap things back around? The use of stories. How well do they use stories to make their point? Their facial expressions, their passion, their organization, their audience engagement, confidence, and their online presence, because we're going to an online world and you need to be aware of how you come across online. Now, I have developed a piece of paper on this, all 12 of those with details below it. You can't see it here. I will put it in the chat afterwards for you, so you can have those 12 points and you can think of things that you would like to do as an evaluator down the road, and you have a guideline for when you're evaluating. Now, my note-taking method is important. You get that blank piece of paper, or you can have a template if it's a club evaluation, but in a contest, it's a blank piece of paper. And I start writing everything down that they do, whether it's good or bad. And you may not be able to see this too well, but I have a plus and a minus next to each of these, and I just go down in the order they happened. Now I've got this sheet at the end of the speech, and what do? I don't change much. I go put a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 next to the 5 points that I'm going to make. So a 1 next to the first good thing they did, a 2 next to the second thing that I think was a positive, a 3 and a 4 next to the 2 opportunities, and then a 5 next to the thing I think they did absolutely best. So now I have my template for my evaluation right here. It's that simple. It's not that hard. I will also put this in the chat after we are finished. Delivery. When you're in person, 80% of your eye contact should be on the person that you're evaluating, because it's about them. It's not like a normal speech where you want to engage the entire audience. You are having a conversation with the person you're evaluating. It's a little bit harder to do online, but I'll always start off, Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially you, Linda, and I will single them out and I will go with them. Now, you want to demonstrate things too. People learn 3 ways. They learn by hearing, by seeing, and by doing. It's kind of hard to have the audience do something, but if somebody does, they have a nervous tic and they're always brushing their hair back like this in the middle of speech. One thing I noticed is you tend to take your hand up and move your hair back, and you do that gesture because the people that learn visually will pick up on that. You had a great gesture when you hit yourself on the side of the head. I will do that so people relive that moment. So you want to get the audio learners as well as the verbal learners engaged. And when you give that summary, I talked about summary, always start off in a contest so the judges know you're summarizing. In summary, this, and this. You don't want to leave that to chance and have the judges say, I don't remember hearing a summary. Hit them on the side of the head because sometimes they miss it. And the 7th and final point, because I'm running out of time, the most important point, it's about the speaker, not about you. Moderator.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Our third panelist today is Stan Piskorski. And Stan has been a Toastmaster for 37 years. He believes that the key to becoming a more effective speaker is becoming a more effective evaluator. He is the only 3-time winner of the District 30 evaluation contest. He has also won a District Table Topics contest, has been recognized as District Toastmaster of the Year, delivered workshops at many district conferences and TLIs, and even won international convention. And each winter, he dons a red suit and becomes Stanta. Stanta?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster and Madam MC. Well, it's great being third because you get to pick up on some of the stuff that the other folks said. And I agree with a whole lot of things that I've heard. When Tina said there's a difference between the club contest and the speaking a speaking contest, evaluation contest, and a club evaluation, I completely agree. Because although Kevin said it's about the speaker, not you, unfortunately, in many contests, it's become about how good you deliver your feedback rather than the quality of the feedback that you give. I personally don't care whether the person that giving the feedback has ums and ahs his way to 20% or 30% of the presentation if the feedback is good, but they won't win a contest. And that, I think, is sadly what has happened over the past maybe 10 or 15 years. I was very lucky. When I was a brand new Toastmaster, I sat in on a presentation about how to do a good evaluation, a 2-hour presentation about how to do an evaluation, 2 hours to do 3 minutes. That's pretty cool. And I was so taken by it that I sat in again and again and really sucked up all that information. And it helped me win the first 2 evaluation contests I entered way back in the 80s. So that's before most of you ever even heard of Toastmasters. But I've not been very good at contests since then, because most of the time that I'm delivering feedback these days, it's in clubs that don't use a traditional 3-minute feedback process. So I want to talk about a couple of things that might be of some value to you. I'm going to share my screen here. I want to talk about the balancing act. And to me, the balancing act, you can see my screen now, thumbs up if you can. Okay, good. So the problem that I think a lot of people who are giving feedback have trouble with is something really that Tina talked about. And that is the fact that there's a real balance between encouragement and the actual feedback, the learning, the coaching, if you will. And beginning speakers probably need about 80% of encouragement, especially if there's someone like Tina who was afraid and terrified. And let's face it, why do so many people join Toastmasters to begin with? Lack of confidence, fear of speaking, all those reasons. So at the beginning, encouragement is critically important. And as Tina said, if you know something about the background of the speaker, you can provide more encouragement and a little bit less feedback. But when you talk to people like Kevin and me and some of the folks in our club, it's less about encouragement and way, way more about feedback. And so following that balance is critically important in order for you to be able to really help the person get to wherever they want to go. It's important to know what their personal goals are, as Tina said, and their speaking goals. In fact, Tina said a lot of good things. It's not a surprise to me that she won an evaluation contest. Second thing I'd like to share is my methodology, basically. Just like Kevin said, I open up with a Madam Toastmaster, Madam Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, honored guest, and most importantly, the speaker. But then I go into the process of what I call the OARS method. And each of the pieces of feedback follows a 3-part process. So the beginning part is giving feedback is observation. What did I see? What did I hear? Now, the speaker controls what you see and what you hear. What they don't control is your reaction. That's how you felt about what you saw and what you heard. And the third piece is, well, what is your suggestion? And that suggestion could be something to either use something that was effective even more, or to use something that was ineffective and change it. By the way, Tina, in relation to this 3 thing, that's how the Germans say 3. And those of us who have really bad fingers have a really rough time with this one. So I've taken on the German 3. Now, how do I keep track of all that? Well, I use a form somewhat similar to what Kevin talked about. I talk about what I've seen someone master, not what they did well, but what I saw that I felt that they mastered. And I look at just writing down the observations, because after the speech is over, I can talk about what my reaction was and what suggestion I have. And like Kevin said, I look at a growth opportunity and I number them also, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. When I was first starting, I needed more guidance. And like Kevin, I created a sheet of things that are things I want to look at. Quite frankly, it was based on the old CTM manual, which is before most of you even have heard of Toastmasters, but it's very similar to what is in the CC manual. And like Kevin, I will post both this form and the other form in the chat. The one thing I will disagree with Kevin in is the sandwich method, because and I'm really upset about Toastmasters for continuing to promote the sandwich method, because there is research that says the sandwich method is actually confusing because it sends a mixed message. So although I would have here are the things that I thought you showed mastery in, here are the things where you have the opportunity for growth, the thing I put on that bottom of the sandwich is encouragement, not something else they did well. So what I'm looking for on that bottom one is encouragement, because change doesn't happen overnight. If change happened overnight, I'd be thin I'd be thin again. I'm not, and I'm not going to be overnight. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Linda and I'll open it up to your questions.
Right, thank you so much. Now, at this point, I'm going to be asking some questions of our panelists, but what I'd like to do, just for your all's information, my panelists, is that I'm pinning all four of us rather, to the screen. So please don't think nobody's looking at you on the recording if you're not the one speaking. And also for our audience members, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those into the chat so I can relay those to our audience. So I'd like to start with Tina. Now, Tina, I actually asked a mutual friend of ours, Valerie, about what having you as a regular club member was like and what you were good at. And what she said was that you were very good at giving a speaker good, very detailed and specific feedback for what they wanted to know. But what can a speaker do to help you do your best?
That's a wonderful question, Linda. And I think that as a speaker, because I have also been in international speech contests, and the best way to be able to make use of that feedback is to explain to your evaluator, what is it that I'm looking for? So with a contest speech, for example, my friends and I love contest speeches, and sometimes we'll simply say, you tell me what I need to do to win, right? Sometimes it's that simple. But if there is something that you are worried about, think about, what do you think this speech may be lacking? And then ask your evaluator to look at that. And because in my clubs, I've had that happen, and we either confirm or we say, no, I didn't see that. So that's not something I think you need to worry about. Sometimes we worry unnecessarily about things that really aren't there. There are things in our heads that we think are the big problems with the speech, and it's not a big problem with the speech at all. The best thing that you can do as a speaker to help your evaluator is really have thought a little bit about what is your goal. What are you trying to do with this speech? And if you can articulate that to your evaluator, then that gives them something to look for. And if you're totally lost as a speaker and don't know what to say, ask the question, what do you think is the one biggest thing that I need to change about this speech? And what's the one thing you think I need to keep in this speech? And I think even those two questions will take you really far in creating a better speech the second time around.
Great, thank you, Tina. Stan or Kevin, would either of you like to add a brief comment to what she said? Kevin?
Yeah, and if you're the speaker and the evaluator has not reached out to you ahead of time to find out what you want to focus on, what you want feedback on, reach out to your evaluator. You know, it's a two-way street. You don't have to wait for them to contact you.
Great. Okay, so a couple of questions have come in from our audience that were directed specifically at Stan, although the other two of you can chime in. And those are, can you please provide some examples of how you'd encourage the speaker at the end of your evaluation? Can you give an example of encouragement versus saying what was done well?
Well, the one that I typically will go to, which is almost cliche at this point, but I really mean it, is I'm looking forward to hearing you deliver this again, because I actually want to see whether or not any of the things I recommended were used to make that speech better. But another way that I could add encouragement would be very simple, but you say something like, I believe that if you add gestures at the appropriate point, this speech will be so much more effective the next time you deliver it. And please invite me to that presentation so I can see how much you've improved. Something like that would be the encouragement that I would put at the end. So it is, in fact, summarizing, if you will. That's the place I always lose points in the contest, because I just don't pay attention to the forms anymore. But I'm kind of terrible about that. So last time I was in a contest at the district level, unfortunately, I came in third, probably because I didn't have enough of a summary. Back to you, Linda.
All right, thank you. Kevin or Tina, want to add anything?
I have just a suggestion that you can't use all the time, but something that when it comes up, it's, I think, powerful to use is, if a speaker gives a speech and there's something in that speech that is really interesting and you want to hear more of, this happens a lot at Round Rock Chamber Masters, where Valerie and I are members. Sometimes people say one sentence and you're like, oh my goodness, that sentence was interesting. And sometimes they don't realize that sentence could be the basis for a whole nother speech. And so what I'll encourage them to do is, can you tell me more about this thing? And sometimes it blows their mind away, because we have a friend in Chamber Masters, I do this to her all the time, and she says, no one would want to hear about that. And I said, yeah, literally everyone except you wants to hear about that. So, and that has worked. And this particular individual, she's been giving her speeches, and one of the most powerful speeches she ever gave was based on something that she said, no one would ever want to hear about that. So that's something I use.
All right, thank you. So here's another question from me, and I think I'll direct this one to Stan as well. Stan, you have the most experience, so we'll just ask you a lot of questions. I find that the most challenging evaluations are either for speakers who are very, very good or speakers who are very, very bad. Do you have any suggestions on how to deal with either of those extremes?
Absolutely. In the case of those that are very, very bad, as Tina said, pick one thing that really, really, really could help. And if it's only one thing that makes a difference, that's all you really need to do. But also to make sure that you provide very specific feedback on how to be different. So for example, and when we're virtual, one of the things that I find all the time is that people gesture like this at the bottom of the screen. So I've picked up a way to talk about that. And I say, look, I don't want to see the shark at the bottom of the screen. I want you to hold your hands up shoulder height so we can see your gestures. So you have to be able to model the behavior that you are looking for that one person to have, whether it's how to put the speech together in an order, or, most people have a very difficult time with organizing their presentation. So I would look at how you might be able to do that. Now, with very experienced speakers and very good speakers, one of the things I really focus on are the things that they did extraordinarily well. Because if they've taken the time to craft their presentation really carefully, I want them to know I caught it. Yes, that was really, really helpful. And sometimes that's just as important, if not more important, than trying to find the little bitty thing that they could be corrected on. So I would really take very careful notes about something you saw that you thought was particularly effective, especially on the good speakers, because when you're giving an evaluation in front of a club, when you tell a good speaker something that person did extraordinarily well, all the other members of the club go, oh, I could do that. And that really helps everybody else learn from the evaluation process.
Great. Thank you so much. So Kevin, here is one from the audience that I'm going to direct to you. It says, what do you do when you are so engrossed in the topic and mesmerized by the presentation that you accidentally miss what you need to be watching? Is it just experience?
You know, that's a great question. I want to go back to something Stan said first, and I'll answer that. When I have a really good speaker, what I will do to give them suggestions is I will take something they did well and say, you did this extremely well. However, if you did this, you could bring it up even to another level, because people don't focus on their strengths, improving their strengths. Sometimes the best way to improve is to improve one of your strengths a little bit. So I will take a strength that they have. You already do this extremely well. However, if you do it this way, you'll just elevate it that much. So that's another way to take somebody that's a really good speaker, look at some of their strengths that could get just a little bit better and bring them to that next level. And as far as focusing on people, we've all done it. And I've given some pretty bad evaluations because I get so engrossed in what they're saying. And it is practice. I've got to get in that mindset. I'm the evaluator. I can't get engrossed in this speech. I have to be paying attention to the types of things that I can give them a decent evaluation on. It just takes practice, and I mess it up still now and then too, because there are some fabulous speakers out there and you get so engrossed in what they're saying, it's hard to separate from that. And remember, I'm supposed to be writing things down so I can give a good evaluation.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Kevin. Tina, do you have anything to add right now?
I would say in the short term, just remember what you saw, what you felt, and what you heard. But in the long term, it's not a problem, because in the long term, what I've discovered is I'm obsessive about evaluating, and I literally evaluate everything. Our dear friend Catherine went to testify. I gave a wonderful story at Testify last night. And my boyfriend and I came home and we're like evaluating all of the stories, thinking, oh, that was great. How can we make it even better? It becomes like this obsession with evaluations. And I think that came from Catherine and I are in a club together where we give 6 evaluations per speech. When you see so many evaluations and do so many evaluations, literally your brain is constantly thinking that way. It's a double-edged sword, because sometimes you want to turn it off and you can't. So that's what's waiting for you down the road.
All right, so another comment came in from someone that I thought was very.
Wait, I want to add something there real
sorry.
quick. What Tina just said is, after you get really, really good at this, you can't help but give feedback. I just started physical therapy of this past week. And one of the things I noticed is that the physical therapist said of something, well, that's not unexpected. And I said to him, why did you use the double negative? If it's common, say that's usually expected, or that often happens, rather than making it confusing. So I'm giving feedback to the physical therapist as if he was a speaker, and he didn't ask for it, but he received it well.
That's great. All right, and something came in from one of the audience members that I thought was quite interesting. She said, there seems to be so much emphasis on everything but the message. I'd rather hear a good message delivered by a medium speaker than a great speaker who does not inspire, educate, or entertain. And that actually reminded me of a speech I heard once where somebody spoke with great vocal variety and gestures and all the rest. But at the end of it, I thought, but you didn't say anything. So as an evaluator in the Toastmaster world or in whatever world, do you feel like your job is to evaluate the message or the delivery of the message? And I think I'll start with Kevin on that one.
Yeah, it's really both. And when I listed my 12 points, I listed them pretty quick, but I look at the opening and the closing, how well they engaged the audience, how well that they were able to wrap it up and get that message across. I look at their use of stories, how well they communicate and convey their message. I look at their audience engagement, and part of audience engagement is talking about something interesting. So those are all pieces of it. It's a combination of both. You have to mix them both. Sometimes you're going to be heavier on the story side, and other times you can be heavier on the delivery side, but the best evaluations usually have a little bit of both inside of there.
All right, Tina or Stan?
I think as long as you don't argue with the person about the content, I believe that if you're really good at evaluation, you should be able to evaluate a speaker who you completely disagree with, but help them get that message across in the most effective way possible. So in fact, I've given that information to someone. I said to them, I am the audience you want to reach, and you didn't reach me, and here's why. So yes, it's important to talk about the content. Unfortunately, the traditional tools in the Toastmaster set of tools doesn't focus on the content, because too often when people give feedback about content, it becomes about debating. And that's a really bad piece of feedback to give.
Yeah, I think Stan makes a really good point. I think evaluating content can be tricky because people sometimes want to debate. But I think your job as an evaluator is not to debate whether you think they're right or not, but to imagine that you are their target audience and what would convince you. And if you're not their target audience, that's the best, because you can think about what would convince me of this. So in a regular club meeting, to try to decide, should I evaluate the content or the delivery or both, I always go back to what are the speaker's goals, right? It kind of depends. And I think the delivery is easier to evaluate. I think if you've got a speaker who's just starting out, sometimes it's easier to start them with the delivery aspects and wait for the content until later, because a lot of content, what I'm discovering is a lot of the content comes down to people just not being able to structure their speech properly. And that's not a simple fix. That's a long-term fix. So I feel like taking the long looking down the road with any speaker, and what can I fix today easily, and then what can maybe I wait till later. I take all of those things into consideration with what I'm going to tell any individual speaker on any particular day.
Thank you, Tina. So I have another question from me that I'd like to direct to Kevin. How has your skill in evaluations helped you in the world outside of Toastmasters?
It's helped quite a bit. And back in 2009, after my company was taken over by another company, I was teaching a class, and my vice president of operations came down to kick off the class and get it off on the right foot, let everybody know how important it was. He said, Kevin, you speak at conferences and you are a Toastmaster. Could you evaluate my presentation to your class? I gave his secretary a 5-page report at the end of the day. Didn't hear from him for a week. And then he pokes his head in my office door the next week and says, hey, Kevin, what are you doing next week? I said, I hope I still have a job after that evaluation, Pete. He says, oh, yeah. He says, I'm flying to our brewery in Williamsburg, Virginia next week to give communication meetings. Would you fly up in the corporate jet with me, help me refine my speech, evaluate me giving that speech, and give me feedback on the way back? And I said, well, I got to ask my boss. He said, your boss works for me. You're going. So I became his personal evaluator. And then for the next 6 months, I was invited to meetings I should have never been at, evaluating his presentations to people above him. So I got to do that. I started doing his directors when I changed jobs a few years later. That became 30% of my job, even though I was hired for something completely different. And now I coach people on public speaking, and I started at $100 an hour. I'm up to $200 to $250 an hour, and people are gladly paying that. So you can turn this into a business if you want. That's how it's benefited me.
So Stan or Tina, any comments on that one?
When I got known as an evaluator in my district, I ended up getting a job coaching people who were making presentations at conferences, industry conferences, and I was hired by the company that did the audio visual. So we would hold rehearsals ahead of time, and I had a great time doing that, made a fair amount of money doing it, would have started a company with it, but decided, no, that really wasn't where my passion was, but really loved doing that. And it was an eye-opening thing because I got so much opportunity to learn about things that were well beyond what anything that I was interested in, like the railroad maintenance of way convention. These are the people who take care of the tracks on the trains that fortunately we do not have a strike for this week.
Okay, Tina, any comments on that one?
Yeah, the contest itself, I will say that in particular hasn't really opened up too much to me, but the journey of the contest, and particularly the journey of becoming the evaluator that could win a contest, has been something that has changed my life. And I would never have gone down this road just to become a better speech evaluator. That's kind of meh. But what I've discovered is how learning to give feedback is like something that comes up in every part of life. And it sounds so cliche to say, oh, it's literally changed my life, but it actually has. My boyfriend's a Toastmaster. A lot of my friends are Toastmasters. When difficult subjects come up, it's helped us to be better communicators. And you could argue, well, you can get that from being a speaker. I don't think so. I think understanding feedback, in particular, how someone else will receive your feedback, because it can be surprising sometimes how they receive your feedback, is something that you can take into all parts of your life and really make you a better spouse, a better employee, a better friend, or any number of other better things that you want to be.
Okay. All right, thank you so much, Tina. And I feel like that just makes a wonderful closing comment for this whole panel discussion. So thank you, Tina, for joining our club today to be part of this. I appreciate it very, very much. And thanks to Stan and Kevin as well. If any of our audience members have any questions that didn't get answered, you can certainly stick around, as we will after the meeting, to ask them. But now we're going to go on to demonstrate some of the high-level feedback that this club is known for. We're going to have one of our members deliver a speech, and then we'll be doing a round-robin evaluation after that event. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speaker. Hold on just a second. I'm also running the recording, so let me just do a little juggling. All right. So our speaker tonight is Haji, also Al-Haji Abubakar. How did I do on that, Haji? All right. So Haji has been a member of Toastmasters for 4 years, and one of the skills he continues to develop is his storytelling. Haji believes that we are all storytellers with the ability to transform lives with our message. But first, you must learn to harness the power of your story. He created his company, Voices for Transformation, as a way to help leaders and influence do just that. So Haji will be speaking about Don't Wait, Al-Haji Abubakar.
In the year 2019, 843,593 applicants became United States citizens. That's according to data from the USCIS. It's the same year my mom applied to become a citizen. Now, even though myself and my two siblings were born here in the US, making us citizens, our parents immigrated here from Ghana. My dad, with the help of an attorney, became a citizen in 2009. This meant my mom was the only non-citizen in our immediate family. For her, becoming a US citizen meant the freedom to travel back home to Ghana for more than 180 days, which was the limit she was granted as a green card holder. But no achievement comes without its challenges. And for her, it was the portion of the citizenship interview which tested her knowledge of US history, including her ability to read and write. But being raised in a rural part of Ghana meant that my mom could read at no more than a third grade reading level, but she was committed. Plus, she had the best coach supporting her to achieve this goal. Yours truly. I was reminded of my grammar school years when my mom would burst into my room unannounced and yell, "Turn off the TV and study." Now, anytime I visited my mom to help her prepare, I would burst through the front door and say, "Now it's time for you to turn off the TV and study." But she didn't have everyone's support. In fact, my dad said, she should just get a lawyer like I did. And I get it. It's common for applicants to hire an attorney to take the guesswork out of the interview process, especially when English isn't their first language. But as her coach, I kept her belief high. This meant daily phone calls to review questions, weekly visits to my parents' house for study sessions. We studied and studied and studied until the day came. My mom and I arrived at the immigration office at 9 a.m. sharp on a frigid Chicago morning. We sat in a large space filled with chairs, surrounded by families, all with the same goal in mind. There was a calm tension in the air. Just before she walked into that room, I noticed her shivering, but not because of the Chicago weather. I looked her in the eye and said, "Just remember all the work we did. You're ready." She smiled and walked through the door. 45 minutes later, she exited that room. I noticed a look of confusion on her face. She looked up and said, I guess we have to keep studying." My heart dropped. Then she said, "Because I'm ready for the next challenge. I passed. Do you think she was excited? On the elevator ride down, her focus turned to me as she simply said, "Thank you." This journey connected us on a new level. I don't think I had ever seen my mom this confident in herself. Now, I failed to mention a very important part of this story. You see, just a couple months prior, my mom and I walked into that same building, and she walked through that same door. But when she walked out, the look on her face broke my heart. Yes, she was unsuccessful the first time. But what stood out to me most was that on both occasions, she walked out of that building a new person. I once heard the motivational speaker Les Brown say, "In order to do something you've never done, you have to become someone you've never been." Ladies and gentlemen, each time you set a goal, you're making a deal with yourself to transform into a new person. The person who was capable of achieving that goal. And in my eyes, that's the real goal. But that person is not created overnight. It can take years. So my message to you is simple. Don't wait. Celebrate. Don't wait until you get the job or until you pass the test. Celebrate today. Showing up every day, or even if it's just some days, means you're moving one step closer, and that's a reason to feel good about yourself and what you've accomplished. And that's what I want you to do today. Because by being here tonight, you've taken one step towards the goal of evaluating like a winner. And for that, I will celebrate with you by giving you a virtual high five. And you know what? The more you celebrate on the way to your goal, the more joyful the journey. And the more joyful the journey, the more joyful your life. Don't wait. Celebrate. Now, before I go, I just want you to know that in the year 2019, 843,593 applicants became US citizens. And one of those applicants was my mother, Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Haji. I was thinking it would be great if you could bring your mother to one of these meetings sometime. She sounds like somebody we'd really love to meet. So next I'm going to introduce Haji's speech evaluator. And this is an illustration of one of the things that we do in our regular meetings. One of the speeches has the evaluator go immediately afterwards, because if you think about it, in the real world, do you get to go away for 5 minutes and scribble on a piece of paper? No, you need to give immediate feedback. So this gives an opportunity for someone to demonstrate that, and that someone is Kevin. So Kevin, you ready?
Toastmasters, guests, and especially you, Haji. Haji, we all love success stories, and the way things are going in the world right now, we really need them. You did it. A lot of things you did well. First, I like the lesson at the end of your speech, and that is you showed up today and you motivated us to do better, to do our best, to keep moving forward. And that's a message that all of us need to hear, because like I said, things are tough in the world right now. Another thing you did well is when your mom burst into the room and she said, turn off the TV and study. Or at the end when you said, don't wait, celebrate. Your vocal variety was good. You ramped it up and you got our attention. You also talked about when your mom passed the test and she was coming out kind of downtrodden, and then she got excited and told you she passed. You really started to bring us down. You brought us right back up with that change in vocal variety. And that's a great way to use vocal variety to bring us through those various emotions. Like all of us, you have a few opportunities. And the first one I'd like to give you is when you were having some conversations with your mom, you would just look straight forward and have those conversations with us. Well, one way you can do it is just turn to the right when you're talking yourself and to the left when it's your mom talking. That gets those visual learners. Or you can switch that. You can turn either way for yourself. But by doing that, you've gone into character. And if you can change your voice a little bit, great. But even just turning like that and being a different character gets people in that mindset. They know it's your mom speaking. They know it's you speaking. Another thing is Zoom presence. We all have to be aware of that. A couple things, your gestures, as Stan was talking about, were a little bit cut off. You want to get them up a little bit higher. You have some room. There's a lot of space above your head on the screen. You could have actually tilted your camera down just a little bit, or you could have gone and there you go. Or you could have gone and just moved a little bit further back and gotten more in the screen so your gestures were there. You had some great gestures up high, but several of your gestures went down a little bit too low and we couldn't quite see them. You also seem to be looking off of the camera a little bit. Try to look at that camera as much as you can. You lost eye contact, and even in Zoom, that's a way to connect with the audience, to try to have that eye contact. But what I like best is your use of stories. You had some phenomenal stories. Your mom's citizenship story at the start. You're sitting at the immigration office, her passing. All these were just great stories. And Darren LaCroix always says, tell a story, make a point. You made a point with each of your stories. Did a great job with that. So in summary, I like the lesson at the end. I think you did a great job with your vocal variety and bringing us on that emotional roller coaster with it. I would love to see your gestures up there a little bit. Just watch your Zoom presence and your camera angle and how you do things on the camera. With conversations, try to just differentiate the conversation. But above all else, the thing that you did fantastically was tell those stories. Keep doing it, and you're going to be a fantastic speaker like you already are. Moderator.
And thank you so much, Kevin. Well, now I'm going to be calling Kevin back to the stage because at this point, we're going to do our roundtable evaluation. And I'll let Kevin explain what's involved with that. But before I get into it, I'd like to go ahead and ask Haji. We always ask our speakers, what level of feedback do you want? One would be, I was having a really bad day and please be nice. And 5 is give me everything and anything. And Haji wants a 10, I believe. I think I saw him waving 2 hands there.
Let's show our guests how we do things here.
That's okay. And honestly, I've never seen anybody be particularly mean except possibly me. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kevin to lead that section of the meeting. Kevin?
One thing unique about our club is we do a roundtable evaluation, and the speaker provides us with the questions on what they want the evaluation to focus on in the roundtable. So I put 3 questions in the chat. And the first question Haji would like answered is, was the message relevant to the story? Was there a more impactful message that stood out to you? And if you could just raise your virtual hand, I will call on you that way. And guests, you're more than welcome to help participate in this and give Haji some feedback. Okay, somebody said they didn't see the questions in chat. Is there anybody else that can't see the questions in chat? Oh, yeah, because I sent them directly to somebody. I'm sorry, because somebody sent me a private message. Let me do it again. Everyone in meeting. There we go. So was the message relevant to the story? Was there a more impactful message that stood out to you?
Tina.
Oh, Tina?
Yes, I had an answer to your question, Haji. I did think there was one message that was more relevant to the story. Although I loved the celebrate, the message that I got was keep trying. And so that was one message. And also I thought it could be, there are many ways you could have gone with this. The story between you and your mother, that was so tender. And the fact that you helped her, you could bring that into your message about helping someone else to achieve their dreams. So there are a couple of messages. I didn't think the celebrate message was the best one. I think there are many others you could explore. And I wanted to just make a couple of other comments, one of which goes with your point number 2. What could have drawn me even more into the story? At the end, near the end, you went back and referenced the story of your mom not passing the test the first time. I personally think that you should tell that story at the beginning. I think letting us know that she has already failed this test once would be very impactful for the whole trajectory of telling us what the problem was. Why was this such a big deal? The fact that she didn't pass the first time was, I thought, truly a big deal, and it would have really been impactful to know that ahead of time. I loved the way you told us that she did pass, and I think even that would have been more impactful if you would have told us that she came out with this look, this sad look, and then the second time she came out with the same look. That would actually be impactful. And finally, for your encouragement of the day, you already have a contest speech. And so I expect to see you on the International Contest Speech stage next year.
Thank you, Tina. Stan, you have your hand up.
I want to piggyback a little bit on something that Tina said in relation to that story. If you had told the story first about your mom failing and then talked about the potential impact of her failing and the fact that she would have to go back, your family would be without a mother. And then you could also re-emphasize and say, if your father could have said something like, I told you you should have gotten a lawyer, so that it really increases that. And part of the reason that it was a little distracting was because of the way you said it. I didn't mention that. It was almost like you forgot to say it, even though it's clear that it was on purpose. So I agree with what Tina said. I also really like the fact that you took a quote from Les Brown and you didn't just throw the quote out there. You actually interpreted the quote and applied it to this particular story. I've seen so many speakers that get one quote or two quotes, and they think that just laying the quote in there is going to be impactful. I thought the interpretation of the quote was the important piece that you did. And it's another thing that you can cause for increasing the impact is making the gestures accurate. So instead of going, we studied and studied and studied, it's like we studied and we studied, because this would be a gesture, would be like continuing to look at books. At least that's what I think it means. You can all tell me whether or not you interpret this as looking at books. Back to you, Mr. General, or Mr. Facilitator.
Moderator, same thing. Okay, let's go on to the second question. How could Haji have drawn you in even more with the content of the story? Okay, I'll start off since nobody's speaking right now. And one way, Haji, where you talked about your mother at the beginning, maybe have you ever felt fearful that you weren't going to accomplish something, or something where, have you ever taken a test and wondered if you were going to pass, or have you ever pursued something that was so important that you got nervous about? So what you're doing is you're bringing our emotions into it, and now you're having the audience come into your story. So something along the lines of bringing your audience in by tapping into their feelings as well. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes, Charmin. And then we'll go with Masayo next.
Yes, Haji, I would just make one suggestion when you're telling the story. When your mom would say, thank you, just pause a little bit longer. And she said, thank you. And that really touched me, and kind of elaborate on your feelings more, and then we will feel more with the story. But it was a great story. Thank you.
Okay, Masayo?
Yes, thank you very much, Haji. I thought that your message is don't wait, but celebrate, right? And I was a little bit waiting. Well, what? I want some specific or concrete examples. Celebrate what? For example, for your working hard every day, or encouraging everybody, or attending the meeting every time, or something like a concrete specific things I want. Thank you.
Okay. Catherine?
Hi, Haji. So I've walked through the same doors as your mom, but I wanted to say, so I am a citizen, but I have friends that are not, so I'm not exactly sure what your mom had, if she had a green card or whatever she had, but if there was an opportunity there, because I know a couple of years ago, there was some of my friends were afraid that they'd actually have to leave the United States because of the way things were sitting with politics and green cards, or not green cards, but their legal being in this country legally. So I don't know if there's something there that you could put in, because you and your sister, I think you said, and definitely your dad, were all legal to stay in the country. But if there was a possibility that if it was true that your mom may have had to leave the country because of her status, I don't know if that's something that would kind of, just have terrify, that to a family that one of its members would have to leave the country.
Thank you. And we're running out of time, so we're going to get to the last question. Was the last line a little too cheesy, and did he try too hard, or any suggestions for an alternative compelling close? Stan?
If you're asking the question, is it too cheesy? That means you think it's too cheesy. And you already heard from Tina that It wasn't necessarily the strongest message. You were looking for the rhyme, which is a relatively cheap way to try to get the message across. So probably it was too cheesy because you felt it was too cheesy.
Okay, thank you, Stan. And we are running out of time. So if you have any other feedback for Haji, please direct message him that in the chat. And I did put those 2 handouts that I promised into the chat. You want to get those before you leave. You might want to just save the chat. But Stan put something in there. I put something in there as well. And at this time, I will turn it back to our moderator. Please welcome back Linda.
Thank you so much, Kevin. So at this point, we'll just get a couple of reports. First of all, from our timer. I did not introduce Carol earlier just because everybody knew the drill and I wanted to save time for our main attractions. But Carol, let us know, how did we do?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. We did really well with our meeting today. For our speakers during the 40-minute panel discussion, speaker number 1, Tina, 6 minutes and 50 seconds. Kevin, as our second speaker, 6 minutes, 42 seconds. And Stan, as our third speaker, 6 minutes, 39 seconds. And the overall time was 44 minutes and 30 seconds. We were running well ahead of time there. And Haji's speech was 6 minutes and 12 seconds with an evaluation of that speech by Kevin, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And we were right on the dot for 9 minutes of our evaluation that we had just had. Thank you very much, Madam Toastmaster. Back to you.
Thank you, Carol. Albert, you were our watcher. What did you see?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Yeah, so as the watcher, my role was to look to ensure that we are using our Zoom space as effective as possible, that visual as well as audio. Everyone did quite well, and I want to take this opportunity to also appreciate those who actually turned off their videos so that at least it actually helped to save on the bandwidth so that we have the people who are more actively participating get their audio and video better quality. Just a couple of things I wanted to note is that I don't know if it was just on my end, but Tina, there was like a couple of times that you got frozen, and then also one other thing is that Kevin, when you are picking up like your those handouts and so on to show, it would have been good if you had them like directly in front of you so that you don't have to like go off screen a little. Yeah, so yes. And then Haji, I don't know if it was on my end, but I thought that your audio was a little lower than the others. It seemed like it could have been a bit higher. And I heard there was a little bit of like echoing, like just a tiny bit. It could have been on my end, but all in all, everyone did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Albert. So we're finishing a little bit early, actually, and I'll just let you know that ordinarily we do have 2 speeches. We also have a business speaker that talks a bit about some of the business aspects of becoming a professional speaker. And we also typically do table topics, but we did streamline this meeting quite a bit. But if you'd like to find out what a regular meeting is like, please come back for one of our future events. And with that, I would like to go ahead and turn the meeting back over to our club president, Stan. Stan?
You know, as much as I have all this experience in being a Toastmaster for 37 years, I never know what to say as club president. I do appreciate Linda having put this together. I do many workshops about evaluations, and if you are interested on an actual workshop, I believe there is some contact information on the form that I sent out. That was the sample. It's a double-sided sample of an evaluation program. I know that when many of you signed up, you said, no, not interested in getting additional information. But I'm going to request that even though you said that, should we have another event And we usually have a special event on the 5th Thursday of the month. And this year, or this month, there is a 5th Thursday. We haven't yet nailed down the guest speaker yet, but I'm going to, even though you said you don't want to get that information, I'm going to try to just, for the special events that we will hold, I will ask if you will be willing to receive that. Could I get either a virtual or a physical thumbs up as a general acquisition that that's a good idea? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And please do feel free to visit. You know, the world of virtual is not going away. And we in this club know that it's going to be something that, as a professional speaker, or even someone who speaks professionally, not as a speaking entrepreneur, we're going to have to get really good at being effective on screen. I myself am going to be teaching 3 workshops, 3-hour workshops to a number of individuals over the course of the next 6 months, all virtually. So this is a critically important skill to gather. And we hope that if you want to really build your virtual skills, that you'll come back and visit us and potentially become a member. Kevin, I see your hand is up. I'm happy to open the door for you.
Thank you so much, Dan. And one thing I wanted to let everybody know, you saw a few people in our club that, well, we're an international club. So Masayo is from Japan. Carol is from Australia. Shrusti, is she still here? She came for a while. I can't see if Shrusti's here. She's from Canada. And we have 2 members from India. So what we've learned how to do is become global speakers. Instead of being, I live in St. Louis, instead of being St. Louis centric or United States centric or Midwest centric, I learn when people evaluate me and say, you know, I live in India and I didn't understand what you were trying to say there. So you're learning to speak to everybody instead of and we get in that trap. We assume people know everything we know. We start talking to the same people and they have the same experiences. When you talk, people don't always have the same experiences. That is one thing I just really love about this club.
Thank you, Kevin. Normally we would ask for feedback from our guests. We have an awful lot of guests. So if you want to put some feedback in the chat, please feel free to do so. And we'll actually do something that's rare in a Toastmaster meeting. We will officially end a little bit early, but as Linda said, we will hang around for a while to answer your questions and have an informal discussion at this point. But at this point, meeting is officially adjourned.